Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As I always say, everything I say in reaction to this show is completely speculative, based on very little information. Keep that in mind. Let's watch.
No, not at all.
Today, it just showed me, look, you don't support me. I owe her an apology, though, for asking for the ring back.
That's sad.
It's sad.
She's not in your corner. Yeah. So that will be his angle towards her. Just like, hey, I just need some support. But yeah, I apologize for asking for the ring back. Yeah. I think it's like just enough responsibility taking by him and just enough apologizing by him to give Liz a reason to believe that things will get better, or to convince Liz that this relationship is in fact tremendously better than her past relationships, because there's a chance that she's never been apologized to at all. You know, I've talked with a lot of people like this, both professionally and personally, where I'll ask them, has anyone ever apologized to you for anything that they've ever done to you? Because all of us have been wronged. All of us have experienced injustice. And, you know, I talk about this a lot, that if you aren't apologizing once a week for something, if not more, and if you're not getting an apology once a week for your entire life, and if you're not getting 10 mammoth apologies for the ways in which you were mistreated at times, even in a relatively privileged and good life, there's bad stuff that happens. People get in bad moods and they make mistakes. Our parents make mistakes. Our family, our friends make mistakes. Our kids make mistakes. And they apologize. Anyway, if you're not getting that, then there's something wrong there. If you're not apologizing often and you're not getting sincere apologies often, there's something wrong there. And so many people will say, not only do I not get apologies often, as you say, but I've literally never been apologized to, ever. And he does apologize. Ed does apologize at times. So it's possible that for her, she's just like, this is the promised land. This is an ideal relationship. I've never heard of anyone apologizing before, so this is great. So to her, it's potentially a really good relationship in contrast to the past that she's been through.
Well, I hope she's okay.
She's going to be fine. And,
Yeah, I hope so.
you know,
Actually, I don't have any emotions right now. I think it's all gonna hit later. There's nothing really there holding me back except loving him. So, I don't need him. I don't need him. I've never needed him.
All right, so two things. One, she says that she isn't having the feelings right now and she'll feel them later. Points towards dissociation potentially, but it also could just be she doesn't feel comfortable to just fully let go and emote the way that she knows that she will eventually. I imagine it's probably the latter rather than the former. The other thing we're hearing is that she's like, I think what she's saying right now is, I don't have any reason to stay other than the fact that I love him, I think is what she's saying. Let's rewind that.
Emotions right now. I think it's all gonna hit later. There's nothing really there holding me back except loving him.
Yeah, I think what she's saying is there's nothing holding me back from leaving him or to let it just die, because he asked for the ring back and we don't live together, so I could just let the relationship die. So nothing's holding me back from doing that other than the fact that I love him. And I think that is one of those unnamed things that we often don't really consider when we're watching these shows. When you see someone putting up with something or going through something that, from our standpoint, or even if you're a friend of someone going through something like this, you're just like, why do you go through this? Just leave. It's like such a bother to be with this person. There's so much pain and agony. The factor that is obvious that we don't consider is love, is attachment, is attraction, is that compulsive feeling that we have towards people that we fall in love with. And so I think that's what she's saying.
Later. There's nothing really there holding me back except loving him. So, I don't need him. I don't need him. I've never needed him. I've just always wanted him. So that sucks.
And I don't know if I've talked about this before, but I'm sure people think about it, is that there's something having to do with her dad. Ed is a lot older. Ed might even literally be of the age, maybe even of the demeanor of her own biological father or some father figure that she longs for or lost somehow. So obviously that could be a factor. One could argue, and people have in my field, that we all are doing that when we fall in love, and especially when it's deeply in love and that we have that deep compulsion. We are always, in part, trying to retain a relationship that we had when we were younger, even if it was a good relationship. That we all, as they, in the old days, they would say, well, all men marry their mothers, and they'll find a woman that resembles their mother physically, emotionally, whatever. And that's overly simplistic and reductive, and you can't really prove that by science. It's not something you can really measure. And all this stuff is just a model of a theory, a way of seeing behavior. But it is something to think about. And there's nothing wrong with that. People, oh, that's sick. Why would you want to marry your dad? And another way to put it is that our relationship with our early caregivers are the very first deep relationships that we have, whether it was a good relationship or a bad relationship or somewhere in between. And all of our templates about love and affection and listening to each other and having conflict and paying attention and having fun together are all established in those early relationships, and they become the templates upon which we gauge everything in the future and seek everything in the future. One of the potential examples of this, physical examples of this, is that we kiss often, in most cultures that I know of anyway, kiss our romantic partners on the lips. That doesn't make any sense. Why do we do that? There's a lot of different theories as to why we do that and how far it goes back in our history as a species. But one theory of understanding why we do this, one speculation, is that, and it makes sense to me is that when we are children, we suckle, right? We breastfeed, and we are having a lot of not only sustenance that we're attaining due to breastfeeding, but also the sensual feeling. We are born with an instinct to suckle, with an instinct to suck and to, and we have a lot of instincts, a lot of drive to do that. That's not only, again, tied to getting calories and vitamins and nourishment physically, but also to be soothed and to have someone take care of us and to feel like someone is there for us. The feeling of skin, the feeling of warmth, the whole shebang, not just the suckling, but being held and the heartbeat and the warmth and the voice and the heartbeat, and everything is associated with that love and attention and safety. And it seems we evolved to want that, because as soon as children are born, if you leave them in the crib and they start to cry, one of the sure ways to get a child to be relaxed and to be calm and to fall back asleep is to hold them, right? Or to breastfeed them. And so it's something that's evolved. It's not a choice, right? It's not a cultural notion that is given to us. Like the fact that I wear this shirt right now is a cultural notion. I wasn't born with an instinct to wear this shirt. So why do I like this shirt? Well, because culture taught me all these sorts of associations with plaid and this color and buttons and this, like, why do we even have this collar? It's ridiculous. It's like illogical. But, I've been programmed. But when children are born, they come with their pre-programming, and that's part of it. And we retain that throughout our life. We don't just change our programming when we become a non-infant. And so we retain this, and we bond, and we want soothing through kissing, through physical hugs, and it's emulative of that early experience, right? Maybe even literally breastfeeding. I'm not breastfeeding, but breast play, if you will, if you think about Michael and Angela. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's completely normal, and we don't kink shame, right? So it's all part, it's all gets rep. So that's a physical, visual example of what I'm talking about. It's much broader than that in terms of when you are young and you are experiencing a version of love and all of its ups and downs, all of its pros and cons. And then as an adult, it makes sense that you would want to recreate that because you remember feeling at least some, if you had a great relationship with your parents, your caregivers when you were young, then it would make sense you would try to recreate that later in life because that was possibly the closest you've ever felt to someone. And so you're you're trying to approximate that in an adult version, and there's a lot of things that'll get carried over. Traits, vibes, smells, attitudes, these kinds of things. So whoever you were bonding with, you will potentially look for someone as an adult that will look like them because you associate all those things with them, even though those things might not necessarily be associated with security and attachment, right? But you just have them, they're intertwined, they're associated with each other. So in that way, one could argue that we are all, as adults, trying to marry our early caregivers in that way. You know what I mean? It's not some sick, disgusting Oedipus Electra thing. And of course, Freud and Freudians took it too far to some extent with the Oedipus complex. I could go down a whole jag about how there is a way to route the Oedipus complex and the Electra complex into something that makes sense to me, but you really have to shed and shave off a lot of the ridiculousness within early Freudian theory. And in defense of Freud, he was a genius who was building a whole field of psychotherapy that didn't exist before. Talk therapy didn't exist before. He was developing that without hardly any funding and certainly no research, no published research. Even later in life, when he was older, it was a very fledgling field that he had to fight for all the time. So the fact that he had a lot of weird ideas based on his own experience shouldn't surprise us. A lot of the ideas that he had still hold to this day, you know, things that were very revolutionary and odd at the time, you know, anyway, let's watch. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Let's talk about empowerment. When we feel empowered, we recognize our strengths. When we feel empowered and we experience adversity, we're more likely to see it as a welcome challenge rather than an overwhelming obstacle. And since we're social creatures, we often need help from others to feel empowered at times. We might need others to give us perspective. We might need others to recognize how we might be able to overcome the obstacle. And sometimes the people around us, they're really not that much help. I've been there before. When I went to therapy for the first time when I was 19 years old, it was primarily because none of my friends were very helpful in this area. Sometimes it's really great to talk with a therapist when you want to feel more empowered. Well, that's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp is convenient and flexible and affordable. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
Attention after this. Are you gonna keep doing this or what? With him? Because he seemed like he's a dirtbag, you know?
That's what I don't know.
You know, I'm just cooling down. It was just frustrating for Liz to sit there and play the victim, which she's not.
Yikes. Yeah. I've been wondering if this is a little amplified by him, maybe even the two of them conspiring before the show to create a little bit more drama so that they can come back to another season, because they do get paid for this, remember? And I don't think either one of them is just rolling in financial security, and also all the benefits you get from the fame of a show like this, or even just the allure of being on television. You know, you point a microphone or a television camera at people and say, you know, we're going to put you on the air. Like, you can make people do just about anything. But the more and more that's happening, it looks like this is a legit fight that the two of them are having. The way that he's talking right now, he's saying that she's playing the victim. Yeah. So if we hooked him up to a lie detector test, I'm guessing that he would literally believe his BS right now, because his defenses are so needed and were so needed when he was growing up that he deludes himself into believing these ridiculous thoughts because he needs to believe it so much, because he erroneously believes that if he admits that he's done something wrong, people are never going to love him and that he is absolutely worthless. It's a very black and white perspective. If you allow a little bit of self-criticism or a little bit of taking responsibility, for some people, because they're black and white, then not only are you a little bit flawed, you're entirely flawed. You're either 100% flawed or 100% perfect and superior. There's nothing in between. So I think that's where he is right now. He's really trying to force the narrative in his own mind and among others that he is 100% perfect and not flawed, because if he admits he's a little imperfect, then he will fall into despair.
You know, I'm just cooling down. It was just frustrating for Liz to sit there and play the victim, which she's not. I just felt like she turned everything around. I wanted to be the last person that she would be with. You know, that's who I thought we were.
Are you okay? Until he learns to love himself, he's not going to be able to love you properly.
Yeah, people always say that. And you know, I guess in this instance, that's not inaccurate. Of the times to use that phrase and that, I don't know, that piece of wisdom, I suppose it is fitting because in that black and white thinking, if he were able to have enough self-esteem, then he would be able to withstand a little bit of acknowledgement that he has a flaw.
I can't tell you how stupid I feel right now. Just reliving stuff. And I enable it. I keep going back to it. So
Don't get married. It wouldn't last. There's no way.
I think it's pretty good the way the other cast members are talking to her. I think I was worried that everyone would start attacking her, like, why are you even with him? What's wrong with you? You're stupid. You know, they seem to be listening. You know, it's clear that they all think she shouldn't be with him, but they're not being overpowering with it.
What makes you to be attracted to him?
we do have really, really, really good moments, but like he really is good to my daughter.
That's good.
Yeah, there's a pretty good likelihood that 99% of the time he is kind, a good listener, fun, non-abusive, not only to Liz, but also to her daughter. And we just don't ever see that. I think we've seen a little bit of it, but we don't see it in the way that Liz does. And I'm guessing that Yara is about to say, like, well, I doubt it, or you should leave him, or something like that. And, you know, it's easy from the outside to judge Liz in this moment, but if you've ever talked with your friends about your partner, you know, you and your partner have a really great relationship, but there's things that annoy you about your partner. You go to your friend and you start telling your friend about the things that you are annoyed with your partner. You might get your friend saying, like, oh, you should break up, or there's a vibe that you're getting from your friend that you think that they think you should break up. And you're thinking, well, I mean, these things, yeah, it bugs me, believe me. It really gets under my skin. But at the end of the day, like 99% of the time, it's great. So, and I don't really feel like counterbalancing my complaints now with all the great moments in life. So it's easy from the outside to conclude that one should leave. And it's easy to conclude with Liz that she should leave based on, I think, that lack of awareness of the positive side of things. You know, it's possible that if we saw the whole relationship, or at least for myself, that I would conclude that, yeah, Liz might actually be unwise to end the relationship, that it would be foolish to believe that if she were to leave Ed, that another person out there would be, would create it. Well, it's hard to imagine that would be true. I'm going to take a guess and say that in all likelihood, if she were to go to a lot of therapy, break up with Ed, and date slowly and not move in with people and let things kind of breathe a little bit, that in 5 to 10 years, she would be able to find someone that was a lot more compatible with her and not abusive to her and still had all the positive qualities that she has with Ed. So I'm just going to take a guess and say that that's true. But anyway, let's see what Yara says.
Just you deserve better, so just tell him that.
Okay, of responses of the cast members, that was great. She's like, I don't know, you deserve better. I probably would have said something like that. I think that I would say that even as a therapist, be like, well, I don't know. You know, do what you want to do, of course. You know, it's your relationship, and I don't know the full story, but I'll tell you, what I just saw, you deserve better than that. Whether if that's from Ed, you deserve Ed to treat you better than that. You deserve Ed not to treat you that way, or a different relationship. But it hurts me to see you in pain like that and being treated that way.
He really is good to my daughter.
That's good.
I don't know. Just you deserve better, so just tell him that.
he needs to work on communicating. You both need to work on communicating better. When one hurts, it's not okay to try to make the other
I
person
know I'm not
hurt.
perfect.
You know,
We
it's
fight
bad.
all the time.
They both need to work on communicating, Bilal. That's your advice. One, like, duh, and two, dropping in that notion that somehow she's responsible. Liz was very mature and very fair to Ed in that whole sequence. All that happened was there was stuff that happened last week too. And it's hard to know exactly because Ed might be telling some truth when he was saying that she said, you either marry me in 2 weeks or it's over. Yeah, it could have happened. I doubt it. Anyway, but Bilal is saying that she needs to communicate better and that it's equal, that they're both equally to blame because of the communication.
Yeah.
They're just trying to see who can take it to the highest level.
I mean, yeah, I guess that Bilal and Jovi, they're saying that they bicker, I think is what they're saying. They both try to take it to the highest level. Yeah, I don't know. I think that, especially given the later events with Rose, I would say that if we're to blame someone or someone is more responsible, I think Ed is definitely more responsible for how it went down. All right, well, I want to thank everyone for liking this video or subscribing or hitting the bell or commenting below or all those things, because it makes me feel like you like what I'm doing. It also makes me, gives me some feedback as to whether or not you like what I'm doing. And back in the day when I first started the podcast 14 plus years ago, social media wasn't what it was, and certainly I wasn't very popular. I think only my mom was listening to the podcast for the first few years, literally, to some extent. And it was, I'd record, I'd put it out into the ether, and I'd just be like, well, I statistically, it looks like some people are listening, but I have no idea. To this day, I still get a lot of gratification knowing that people are listening. And by the way, some people have been submitting pictures of the environs in which they're watching the YouTube channel or listening to the podcast. I get a kick out of that because I feel like what I'm doing on YouTube, what I'm doing on the podcast is just an outgrowth of my teachership, my being a professor. And so when I would teach, I have interactions with the students. They contribute and I can see their faces and we're in the same 3D space. We get to know each other. And that's a big deal to me, just lecturing. And at my university, the largest class that I would ever teach would be like 20 students at the most. And that's pretty rare. Usually it's between 6 and 15 students. It's really easy to get to know everyone. I like to know y'all. It makes me feel like I am interacting with real humans because we all have a need to interact with humans. So if you can comment below or hit the whatever indication, just so I know that you're out there, it's sort of like the digital version of you being in a class of mine and you're nodding your head or you're like raising your hand or something and asking a question or you're scowling at me. I'll have students go, huh? Or, I don't like that one. And I'll be, oh, tell me more. So, all that. But only if you care to. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.